I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Dan Hughes from transfer negotiation consultancy company Bridgeability. So welcome along, Dan.
Thanks, Vicky.
In 20 seconds, explain exactly what you do.
OK, nothing like a challenge. We work typically, in the football, we work across industry as well, but in the football world, we work typically with clubs in player recruitment, so whether that be technical directors, heads of academy, typically those sorts of roles.
Yeah.
But we also work with agents, players themselves. If they don't have representation, we're happy to help them and advise them in their negotiations. So whether that be in the transfer fee, whether it be personal terms, etc.
So basically, do you come in and kind of resolve the situation? You are the negotiator, as it were.
We're there to represent one party's interest. We're not like a mediator. We're not there to sort of serve the deal. We're there to serve our client. So if there's someone selling, we'll get them, and if price is the important thing, we'll help them get the best price they can. If it's buying, same thing, just the other way around. OK,
what's the key do's and don'ts when you negotiate?
Yeah, then? Great. There's lots. The first thing I'd say is to think about value. You know, there's a really easy mistake to make, thinking that you can go on any website. There's loads of them, and you can find the value of a player. It's like the book value of a car, a second-hand car. But that's not the value. The real value is determined by the other party's circumstance. So you can go into a negotiation thinking about how much, if you're buying, how much do you want the player? You know, how much are they going to, Newcastle at the moment, who do they need and how much they need them? But it's far more effective if they can go and thinking about the other party's circumstance, the selling club or the player themselves. And if you can focus on that, that's where the real value is. But everything's got two values. You've got the market value, which is led by data, but that's not it. The real value is their circumstance, their pressure.
You mentioned the circumstance there, Dan. Let's just use the Newcastle United as an example. So they're going for Diego Carlos.
Yeah.
There seems to be a gap in the valuation.
Yeah.
How would you, if you were representing Newcastle, how would you advise them to approach that deal?
Yeah, and it's hard once it started. And I'm not saying that Newcastle have made mistakes in this instance, but generally speaking, in negotiations, once it started, you're on the back foot already. But if we're advising them from the start, I'd say first of all, don't worry about their valuation. In fact, don't even invite their valuation. That's a common mistake. They'll go in and say, how much do you want for him? Go in with your own offer. Do your research. Find out why they might want to sell. Focus everything on their perspective. Go low if you're buying. You can go too low and miss out, but you can normally move back up. Go in with some specific numbers. We see it a lot in football where it's 20 million, 25 million. If numbers are round, that means that, well, they've been rounded. And it means there's movement. Make it a bit more specific, a bit more unround. Ask lots of questions. The player, focus on them. What do they want to do? What's their motivation and interest? Where do they really want to be? Can you tap into, because if you can work on them, their agent, that's going to help as much as on the club themselves. You
said those rounded numbers.
Yeah.
Just give us an example. So you're telling maybe Newcastle should go in and maybe say, well, we think he's worth 26.2 million.
Yeah. It might be just as made up, but it sounds more precise. It sounds like it's come from somewhere. If a number's round, then it's been rounded. And if it's been rounded, then you can move it, can't you? And what you want to do in any negotiation is present your offers, your proposals as firm and unmovable. They, whoever they are, have got to believe that that's it and there's no movement. So if they're really round, it just sounds like they've been made up.
What are the usual sticking points that you come across then when you're in these sorts?
There's one big one, and especially in this world, ego. You've got just a whole load of egos, haven't you? I don't think there's any great surprise.
No.
Players,
I thought you were going to say fee.
well, it's not for Newcastle, is it? Yeah. So it might be for some clubs, yeah, of course. But
it's like a chairman's ego or a player's ego.
Yeah, they're huge egos, aren't they? There was a great. I'm going back a few years now, but there was a great example of this. Where remember when Beckham went to Real Madrid from United, and I think was it 25 million? I think something like that. That he went for. I can't remember exactly, but it was something in that order. And a lot of people questioned it. He was getting towards the end of his career. Was he any good anymore? Had they overpaid? And so Madrid were under a bit of pressure, and the president, again, I've forgotten, was it Perez? I can't remember now. Anyway, the president came out and he said, we'd have paid 50. Why did he need to say that? It was to protect his ego. And do you remember what United said? You won't, but what United said in return, we'd have taken 15. Just a complete ego fest, wasn't it?
I remember the same with Cantona, though, when he moved as well. I think they said, look, to save face, can we say we got this? You know, there's a lot of saving face. Does that go on all the time?
Yeah, of course it does, because it's different to some of our other clients in industry where, you know, what we'll talk to them about is, you know, you've got to trade this, almost this sense of achievement. You want the other party to feel they've got the best deal they could, because no one else is involved. But the challenge you've got in football is you've got fans. And a president, a chairman, a technical director, in the old days a manager, you know, they've got to be seen by the fans to be doing a good job. So that means that it's perhaps going to damage that sense of achievement for the other club.
We've got like 6 days now. The deadline day is fast approaching, so I'm guessing the behaviour will change the closer you get. And you talk about ego as well. What are the main behavioural characteristics that you look for, and maybe that you advise your client to say, do this, don't do this?
Great. And even in the biggest deals, it comes down to behaviour. You can have the best plan, the best strategy, but it comes down to two people, ultimately, whether that be an agent and a chairman or whoever. And then we're into the really behavioural aspect of negotiation. So it's being in control of yourself, using that firm language. So if you're a selling club, don't say things like what we want, what we're after, you know, what we're looking for. That's typical language. But again, that suggests that they'll take less. So if I'm working for someone and the other party says we're looking for X, first thing I say to my client is, right, that means they can accept less. It's just simple. So try and get rid of that kind of language. Be firm in everything that you do. Be in control of the whole process. Think about the time pressure, because time pressure is huge, and in this world it's real. You know, in other sectors there are deadlines, but they're usually movable. Not here. It's next Monday. That's it. If they want to do a deal in this Monday, that's it, isn't it? So as deadlines loom, pressure increases, and people behave differently under pressure than they do earlier in the process. That's just a simple fact. So
can I just interject there? Will you get a better deal closer to the deadline than you will kind of like the 1st of Jan?
Depends who you are, doesn't it? Because for everyone who suffers, for everyone who is a victim of a deadline, there's someone else who's doing well out of it, and vice versa. So yeah, I would like to say, we'll use. You've got a choice with things like deadlines. You can use it, because this is when people panic. You get close to the end, and that's the time to hold your nerve. Hold your nerve then. Try using a bit of no. There's risk. You can get to brinksmanship, which is then ego and unhealthy. But try to hold your nerve, because if you're feeling the pressure, guess what? So are they.
Oh, you've been absolutely fascinating. I'm getting told we've got to move on, so you've been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.